War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, Volume 1, Part 1, Chapter 6. From the next room came the rustling of a woman's dress. Prince Andrei jumped, as if he had just woken up, and his face resumed the expression it had worn in Anna Pavlovna's drawing-room. Pierre lowered his legs from the sofa. In came the princess. She had changed into an informal dress every bit as fresh and elegant as the earlier one. Prince Andrei got to his feet and courteously pushed an easy chair towards her. "I often wonder why it is," she began, as always in French, speedily and fussily setting herself into the chair, "that Annette never married. You must be very foolish, all of you men, not to have married her. Forgive me for saying so, but you really don't know the first thing about women, and Monsieur Pierre, you really are a man for an argument." "I've just been arguing with your husband. I can't imagine why he wants to go off to war," said Pierre to the princess without any of the inhibitions which so often affect the attitude of a young man to a young woman. The princess reacted sharply. Pierre's words had clearly touched a raw nerve. "That's what I keep saying," she said. "I can't understand it. I simply can't understand why men can't get by without war. Why is it we women don't want anything to do with it, don't need it? You can be the judge of this. I keep saying to him, here he is, one of Uncle's adjutants. A brilliant position to be in. Everybody knows him. Everybody admires him. Only the other day at the Apraxins, I heard one lady say, 'Is that the famous Prince Andrei?' I swear it's true." She laughed. "He gets invited everywhere. He could easily end up in the royal entourage. You know, the Emperor has spoken very graciously to him. Annette and I were just saying how easy it would be to arrange. What do you think?" One glance at Prince Andrei told Pierre his friend didn't like this subject, so he said nothing. "When are you off?" he asked. "Oh, please, don't talk to me about his going away. Not that. I won't have it spoken about," said the princess in the same tone, all silly and playful, that she had used with Hippolyte at the party, quite out of place within the family circle, and Pierre was almost one of the family. "Today, when I suddenly thought of all these dear friendships that will have to be broken off. Besides, you know what, Andrei?" She flashed a meaningful look at her husband. "I'm scared. I am scared," she whispered with a sudden shudder. Her husband glanced at her as if he was surprised to find someone else in the room other than himself and Pierre, but he questioned her with icy politeness. "What is it you're scared of, Liza? I don't understand," he said. "See how selfish men are, all of them, every one of them selfish. Just because he fancies it, heaven knows why, he's leaving me, shutting me away all on my own in the country." "With my father and my sister, don't forget," said Prince Andrei quietly. "I'll still be on my own. My friends won't be there, and he tells me not to be scared." Her tone was plaintive now, and her lip curled into a sneer, which made her look anything but happy, rather like a wild animal, squirrel-like and nasty. She said no more, as if it seemed wrong to talk about her pregnancy while Pierre was there, though that was what this was all about. "I still don't understand what it is you're scared of," Prince Andrei said deliberately, without taking his eyes off his wife. The princess blushed and waved her hands in despair. "No, Andrei, I tell you this. You've changed. You really have." "The doctor says you shouldn't be late getting to bed," said Prince Andrei. "You ought to get some sleep." The princess said nothing, but suddenly her tiny, downy lip began to tremble. Prince Andrei got to his feet, gave a shrug, and started pacing up and down. Pierre glanced over his spectacles from one to the other in naive wonderment, squirming as if he too had meant to get up, but he thought better of it. "I don't care if Monsieur Pierre is here," said the little princess suddenly, her pretty face contorted into a tearful grimace. "I've been wanting to ask you, Andrei, why have you changed so much towards me? What have I done to you? You're going off into the army, and you won't listen. Why not?" "Liza!" Prince Andrei spoke only a single word, but it contained a request, a threat, and, clearest of all, an assurance that she would live to regret these words. Nevertheless, she went on hurriedly to say, "You treat me like an invalid or a child. I can see it all. You weren't like this 6 months ago, were you?" "Liza, I am asking you to stop," said Prince Andrei, more meaningfully still. Pierre had been growing more and more agitated during this conversation, and now he got to his feet and walked over to the princess. Clearly, the sight of her weeping was too much for him, and he was on the point of tears himself. "Please don't be upset, princess. I know it seems to you, honestly, I've been through it myself, because, what I mean is, No, sorry, you don't want other people. Oh, please don't be so upset. I must go. Prince Andrei caught him by the arm and stopped him. No, wait, Pierre. The princess is very kind. She wouldn't want to deprive me of the pleasure of spending an evening with you. No, he's just thinking about himself, the princess declared, with no attempt to check her bitter tears. Liza, said Prince Andrei sharply, raising his voice to a level that declared his patience to be at an end. All at once, the princess's lovely little face changed into an angry squirrel-like expression, into a look of fear that made her seem both beautiful and sympathetic. She frowned and glared, directing her lovely eyes at her husband, but her face wore the timid, apologetic look of a dog wagging its drooping tail quickly but without much confidence. Oh, good Lord, murmured the princess, and with one hand holding her gown, she walked over to her husband and gave him a kiss on the forehead. Good night, Liza, said Prince Andrei, getting up to kiss her head, politely, as if she was a stranger to him. The two friends were silent. Neither wished to start a conversation. Pierre kept looking across at Prince Andrei. Prince Andrei rubbed his forehead with a small hand. Let's go and have some supper, he said with a sigh as he got to his feet and went over to the door. They went into the elegant, newly decorated, and richly appointed dining room. Everything from the dinner napkins to the silver, the china and the glass, bore the special stamp of newness that exists in the households of recently married couples. Halfway through supper, Prince Andrei leant on one elbow, and with the air of a man who has something on his mind and has suddenly decided to talk about it, he assumed an expression of nervous irritability, the like of which Pierre had never seen in his friend before, and began to speak. Never get married, my dear fellow. That's my advice to you. Don't get married. Not until you can say you've done everything possible, and until you have stopped loving your chosen woman. Until you can see her clearly, otherwise you'll be making a cruel mistake that cannot be put right. Marry when you're old and good for nothing, otherwise everything good and noble in you will be finished. It will all be flittered away over trifles. Yes, don't look so surprised. If you're expecting some kind of future for yourself, you'll feel every step of the way that everything is closed to you, blocked off, except the drawing room, where you'll operate on the same level as the court lackey and the fool. Oh, why bother? He made a vigorous gesture with his arm. Pierre took off his spectacles, which transformed his face, making it look more benevolent, and gazed in amazement at his friend. My wife, Prince Andrei went on, is a splendid woman. She is one of those rare women with whom you will feel your honor is secure. But, my God, what wouldn't I give now to be an unmarried man? You're the first and only person I have said this to, because I'm close to you. As Prince Andrei said this, he seemed less than ever like the earlier Bolkonsky, who had sat sprawling in Anna Pavlovna's drawing-room, screwing up his eyes and forcing French phrases through his teeth. Now every muscle in his thin face was quivering with nervous excitement. His eyes, in which all the fire of life had seemed to have gone out, now shone with a radiant, vivid gleam. Clearly, the more lifeless he might seem at ordinary times, the more energetic he became when he was roused. You don't understand why I'm saying this, he went on. Well, this is life itself. You talk about Bonaparte and his career, he said, though Pierre had not spoken about Bonaparte. You talk about Bonaparte, but Bonaparte, when he was working his way step by step straight towards his goal, he was free. He had nothing but his goal to go for, and he got there. But you tie yourself to a woman and you'll lose all your freedom, like a convict in fetters. And all the hopes and strength there is in you just drags you down and tortures you with regret. Drawing rooms, gossip, balls, vanity, vacuous nonsense. That's the vicious circle I'm stuck in. I'm off to war, the greatest war there's ever been, and I know nothing. I'm useless. I'm a nice fellow, and I have a sharp tongue, he went on. And at Anna Pavlovna's people listen when I speak, and all these stupid people without whom my wife cannot exist, all these women. If you only knew what these fine women are, or, let's say, women in general. My father's right. Selfish, vain, stupid, totally vacuous. That's what women are when they show themselves in their true colors. You see them out in society. You think there might be something there. But no, there's nothing. Nothing. Don't get married, my dear fellow. Just don't. It seems odd, said Pierre, that you consider yourself a failure and your life ruined. You've got your whole life in front of you. Everything, and you, he did not say what about you, but his tone showed how much he admired his friend, and how much he was expecting from him in the future. How can you talk like that? Pierre thought. He regarded Prince Andrei as a model of all the virtues, because he combined in the highest degree all the qualities he himself lacked. They were best summed up in a single concept: willpower. Pierre always admired Prince Andrei's ability to get on easily with all sorts of people. His remarkable memory, his wide reading, he had read everything, he knew everything, and he could understand something about everything, and most of all his capacity for hard work and learning. If Pierre was sometimes struck by Andrei's inability to dream dreams and philosophize, activities that Pierre was particularly prone to, he saw this not as a defect, but as a positive quality. Even in the very warmest, friendliest, and simplest of relationships, you need either flattery or praise in the way that you need grease to keep wheels turning. "I'm yesterday's man," said Prince Andrei. "There's no point in talking about me. Let's talk about you," he said after a short pause, smiling at his own thoughts of consolation. His smile was instantly reflected on Pierre's face. "Why, what is there to say about me?" said Pierre, his mouth broadening in an easy-going, happy smile. "What am I? I am a bastard," and he suddenly blushed to the roots of his hair. Clearly it cost him a great effort to say this. No name, no fortune, and really, when all's said and done, but he didn't say really what. Anyway, I'm free for the time being, and I'm doing all right. It's just that I've no idea what to get going on. I wanted to talk things over with you seriously. Prince Andrei looked at him with kindly eyes, but as he looked, for all his friendliness and kindliness, he knew his own superiority. "I feel close to you because you're the only living person in our social group. You'll be all right. Choose anything. It won't make any difference. You'll always be all right. But there is one thing. Stop knocking about with the Kuragans and leading their kind of life. It doesn't suit you, all this riotous living, debauchery and all that stuff." "Can't be helped, old man," said Pierre with a shrug. "Women, my dear fellow, women." "I can't see it," answered Andrei. "Decent women are all very well, but Kuragans women and wine. No, I just can't see it." Pierre was staying at Prince Vasily Kuragin's, and sharing in the dissipated lifestyle of his son Anatole, the young man whom they were proposing to marry off to Prince Andrei's sister, in order to reform him. "You know what?" said Pierre, as though a happy thought had suddenly struck him. "Seriously, I've been thinking that for quite a while now. With this kind of life, I can't make any decisions, or think anything through. I've got a permanent headache, and no money in my pocket. He's invited me tonight, but I'm not going. Promise me you won't go." "I promise." It was past 1 o'clock when Pierre left his friend. On one of those limpid white nights typical of Petersburg in June, Pierre got into a hired cab with every intention of going home, but the nearer he got, the more he realized it would be impossible to get to sleep on a night like this, when it was more like evening or morning. You could see right down the empty streets. On the way, Pierre remembered that the old gambling school would be meeting at Anatole Kuragin's that night, and it would usually lead on to a drinking session followed by one of Pierre's favorite pastimes. It would be nice to go to see Kuragin's, he thought, but then he remembered he had promised Prince Andrei he wouldn't go there again. But, as so happens with people who might be described as spineless, he felt such a strong urge for one more shot at the old debauchery that he decided to go. And it suddenly occurred to him that his promise wasn't valid anymore because he had already promised Prince Anatole that he would go before promising Andrei that he wouldn't. Then he began to think that all promises like that were relative. They had no definite meaning, especially if you imagined that tomorrow you might be dead, or something so strange might happen that there would be no difference between honesty and dishonesty. Pierre was very prone to this kind of speculation, which destroyed all his resolutions and intentions. He went to Kuragin's. He drove up to the front of a mansion near the Horse Guards barracks where Anatole lived, went up to the well-lit steps and the staircase, and walked in through an open door. There was no one in the vestibule. Empty bottles, cloaks, and overshoes were scattered about everywhere. The place reeked of drink, and in the distance he could hear people talking and shouting. They had finished playing cards, and supper was over, but the party had not broken up. Pierre threw off his cloak and went into the first room, where there were some leftovers from supper, and a servant, thinking that no one could see him, was downing half-empty glasses on the side. From the third room came great roars of laughter, the sound of familiar voices shouting, and a bear growling. 8 or 9 young men were jostling each other by an open window. 3 others were playing with a bear cub, one of them yanking at its chain and scaring the others with it. 100 on Stevens, cried one. No holding on to the windows, shouted another. My money's on Dólokhov, shouted a third. You're my witness, Kuragin. Forget that bear, there's a bet on here. Down in one, where you've lost, cried a fourth. Yakov, bring us a bottle, Yakov, shouted Anatole himself, a tall, handsome man standing in his shirt sleeves in the middle of the group, his fine shirt front unbuttoned down to mid-chest. Hang on, gentlemen, look who's come. It's old Pierre, good man. He had turned toward Pierre. From the window a blue-eyed man of average height, conspicuously sober, amidst the drunken uproar, called out clearly, Come on over here. Sort out your bets. This was Dólokhov, an officer in the Semenyov regiment, a notorious gambler and swaggering madcap, at present living with Anatole. Pierre beamed at the company. I don't get it. What's happening? Hang on, he's not drunk. Give him a bottle, said Anatole. He took a glass from the table and walked over to Pierre. First things first, have a good drink. Pierre proceeded to down glass after glass, looking doubtfully at the drunken revelers, who were crowding around the window again and listening to what they were saying. Anatole kept his glass topped up, and told him that Dólokhov had made a bet with an English sailor by the name of Stevens, who was passing through, that he, Dólokhov, could drink a bottle of rum sitting on the third-floor window-sill with his legs dangling outside. Come on, finish that bottle, said Anatole, giving Pierre the last glass, or I'm not letting you go. No, I don't want it, said Pierre, shoving Anatole away, and he went over to the window. Dólokhov had a grip on the Englishman's arm, and he was meticulously explaining the terms of the bet, looking mainly at Anatole and Pierre. Dólokhov was a man of average height in his mid-20s, with curly hair and bright blue eyes. Like all infantry officers, he wore no mustache, so that his mouth, the most striking thing about him, was fully revealed. The lines of that mouth were very finely curved. The upper lip closed sharply down in the middle wedge-like over the firm lower one, and at the 2 corners the mouth always worked itself into something like a double smile. All of this together, with the decisive, brazen, shrewd look in his eyes, was so impressive that no one could fail to notice this face. Dólokhov was a man of few resources and no contacts, and yet somehow, despite the fact that Anatole doled out his money in tens of thousands, Dólokhov lived with him and managed to present himself in such a way that Anatole himself and everybody who knew them admired Dólokhov more than Anatole. Dólokhov gambled on everything, and usually won. However much he drank, he always kept a clear head. Both of them, Kuragin and Dólokhov, were currently infamous figures among the fast and loose young men of Petersburg. The bottle of rum was brought. 2 servants, clearly flustered and intimidated by shouts and directions issuing from gentlemen on all sides, were in the process of removing the section of the window frame that prevented anyone sitting on the outer sill. Anatole swaggered across to the window, eager to smash something. He shoved the servants out of the way and pulled at the frame, but it wouldn't give. He broke one of the panes. Come on, Hercules, you have a go, he said, turning to Pierre. Pierre grabbed hold of the crosspiece and heaved, broke the oak frame with a crash, and wrenched it out. Get the lot out, or they'll think I'm holding on, said Dólokhov. The Englishman's bragging, isn't he? Is everything all right? Said Anatole. Yes, said Pierre, watching Dólokhov go over to the window, bottle in hand. The light of the sky shone in with the merging of dusk and dawn. Dólokhov jumped up onto the windowsill, still holding his bottle. Listen, he shouted, standing there and facing back into the room. Silence fell. I bet you. He spoke in French, so the Englishman could understand what he was saying, and his French wasn't too good. I bet you 50 imperials. Make it 100, he added, turning to the Englishman. No, 50, said the Englishman. All right, 50 it is. That I can drink a whole bottle of rum without taking it away from my lips. I drink it sitting outside the window. There. He bent down and pointed to the downward sloping ledge on the outside, without holding on to anything. Is that it? Yes, said the Englishman. Anatole turned to the sailor, took hold of a button on his coat, and looked down at him. He was quite short, and went through the terms of the bet once again in English. Hang on a minute, shouted Dólokhov, calling for attention by banging the bottle on the windowsill. Hang on, Kurrigan, listen. If anybody else can do it, I'll pay him 100 imperials, all right? The sailor nodded with no implication of whether he accepted this new bet or not. Anatole hung on to him, and although the sailor nodded to say he fully understood, Anatole kept on translating Dólokhov's words in English. A skinny young life guardsman, who had lost a lot that evening, climbed up onto the windowsill, stuck his head out, and looked down. "Ugh," he said, staring down at the pavement. "Attention!" cried Dólokhov, yanking him back in, so that he tripped over his spurs and came tumbling down awkwardly into the room. Standing the bottle on the sill to keep it within easy reach, Dólokhov climbed slowly and deliberately out through the window and let his legs dangle down outside, bracing himself with both hands against the sides of the frame. He settled himself, sat down, let go with his hands, shuffled slightly to the right, then to the left, and reached for the bottle. Anatole brought 2 candles and put them on the window ledge, even though it was quite light. Dólokhov's back, with his white shirt and curly hair, were lit up from both sides. Everybody swarmed round the window, the English sailor at the front. Pierre smiled and said nothing. One of the party, a bit older than the rest, suddenly pushed his way through with a scared and angry face and tried to grab at Dólokhov's shirt. "Gentlemen, this is crazy. He'll get killed," said this more sensible man. Anatole stopped him. "Don't touch him. You'll put him off, and then he will get killed. Eh? What about that?" Dólokhov looked round, shifting his position, still supporting himself with both hands. "If anybody tries to get a hold of me again," he said, forcing out his words one by one through tight, thin lips, "I'll chuck him down there. Right then." Whereupon he turned round again to face the outside, took his hands away, picked up the bottle and put it to his mouth, bent his head back, and held his free hand up in the air to balance himself. One of the servants, who had begun clearing up the broken glass, stood transfixed in a stooping posture, his eyes glued on the window and Dólokhov's back. Anatole stood erect, staring. The Englishman winced as he watched from one side. The man who had tried to stop it all had rushed across into a corner and now lay on the sofa facing the wall. Pierre covered his eyes. A feeble, forgotten smile lingered on his lips, and his face was now full of fear and horror. Nobody spoke. Pierre took his hands away from his eyes. There was Dólokhov, still sitting in the same position, only his head was bent so far back that the curls on his neck touched his white collar, and the hand with the bottle rose higher and higher, trembling with the effort. The bottle was draining nicely, and went higher as it did so, bending the head further back. "Why is it taking so long?" thought Pierre. More than half an hour seemed to have passed. Suddenly Dólokhov's spine jerked back, and his arm trembled nervously, enough to shift his whole body as he sat on the sloping edge. He slipped, and his arm and head shook even more violently as he struggled. One hand rose to clutch at the windowsill, but fell back again. Pierre shut his eyes again, and swore he would never open them. And then suddenly he was aware of things beginning to move round about him. He glanced up. There was Dólokhov standing on the window ledge, his pale face full of delight. All gone. He tossed the bottle to the Englishman, who caught it neatly. Dólokhov jumped down from the window, stinking of rum. "Well done, bravo, that's a real bet, you're a right devil you are," came the shouts from all sides. The Englishman took out his purse and counted out the money. Dólokhov stood there, frowning and silent. Pierre leapt up on to the windowsill. "Gentlemen, anyone betting? I can do that," he shouted suddenly. "I don't even need a bet. No, I don't. Tell them to give me a bottle. I'll do it. Just get me a bottle." "Go on, let 'em do it," said Dólokhov with a grin. "What are you, mad? No one will let you. You get dizzy walking downstairs," came the various protests. "I'll drink it. Give me the bottle of rum," roared Pierre, thumping the table with a deliberate, drunken gesture, and he climbed up into the well of the window. People snatched at his arms, but he was so strong he sent them flying if they came anywhere near. "No, you'll never talk him out of it like that," said Anatole. "Hang on. I know how to fool him. Listen, Pierre, I'll accept your bet, but for tomorrow night. Right now, we're all going on to you-know-where." "Right, let's go," yelled Pierre. "Let's go. We can take Bruin with us." And he grabbed the bear, hugged it, lifted it right off the floor, and took it waltzing around the room.